Hi guys, welcome to our Wednesday night devotional. I'm Pastor Sarah and I oversee the discipleship or spiritual growth and development of our members here at Life Transformation Church. Tonight's topic is one I pulled out from our Deeper Life conference, specifically the My Family Life course. Tonight we're going to talk about something called reciprocation, or the strategy for a healthy family. I want to start off with a game, one you might be familiar with. Let's take a look. Alright guys, so we're going to illustrate reciprocity with a game. This is the hand slap game. It is classic. You guys probably played it growing up. All she's going to do is try to slap my hands, and we'll do best out of 5 wins. Okay, ready? Here we go. If you're like me, you might have grown up playing this game. It's a lot of fun, and it's hard not to play for a good 10 to 15 minutes just to see if you can win. This game hinges on the principle of reciprocity. Now, reciprocity is just a fancy word for a simple concept. People respond to people. How do I respond when you try to hit my hands? Now, how do I respond when you pretend to hit my hands? Finally, how do I respond when you try to distract me? And why do I respond that way? To win the hand slap game, you have to act in such a way so that the person responds the way you want them to. In other words, you either trick them or you move fast enough to slap their hands before they can react. Here are some pop culture examples of reciprocation. Let's talk the Avengers, Endgame specifically. Doctor Strange goes into the future to see the multitude of ways their battle against Thanos can end. How many outcomes were there in the battle against Thanos? Do you remember? There were 14,605 different outcomes or different ways the battle against Thanos could have ended. And of those 14,605 outcomes, in how many of those did the Avengers come out on top? There was just the one. So let's talk reciprocation. What did the Avengers have to do to get Thanos and the whole world to reciprocate that single outcome? Iron Man had to be the one to wear the glove and snap his fingers. It had to be Iron Man. That's reciprocation. People respond to people. I do this, you do that. Let's look at one more example from popular culture. Encanto. Bruno sees a prophecy wherein Mirabel is standing in front of a home that's broken and whole. Abuela thinks this means Mirabel is going to somehow break the family's blessing, right? Break the miracle. So knowing this, or thinking this, how did Abuela respond to the prophecy? She outcasted Mirabel. What about Mirabel? How did she respond to the prophecy? She went looking for answers. She went looking for Bruno, right? Now let's think just between Abuela and Mirabel, whose actions reciprocated a broken home and whose actions reciprocated a whole home. Because of Abuela's fear, her actions reciprocated the broken home, and because of Mirabel's curiosity, right, her need for the truth, she reciprocated the whole home. She brought the family together, which is the complete opposite of what Abuela thought she would do. The goal of reciprocity, or reciprocity at its finest, is found in Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17. Here's what it says. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Let me say that once again. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. For believers, this means your relationships have the potential to make you more like Christ and to glorify God. It means your family and social networks can reflect the harmony found within the Godhead. God made people so that they have the ability to respond to one another. That's good news, guys. This means every person has some measure of control over the relationships or situations in their lives. They just need to act. It doesn't mean you can always get the response you want, nor does it mean that you should use reciprocation to manipulate people. It doesn't mean every situation is salvageable or that you can make an abusive situation work. That is not what reciprocation is there for. But reciprocation does mean you have the power to effect change on some level. Most times, people reciprocate without thinking twice. When you act, the people around you have to respond. It is second nature. Very rarely can you do something without the people around you not responding or doing something in return. More often than not, someone's response is a habit they've developed over the years. This makes reciprocity challenging because it requires at least one of the persons involved in the relationship to change an old habit. I'll illustrate what I mean with some examples. When your phone rings, you pick it up to look at the notification. You had to learn that habit. How long do you think it would take you to break that habit, to have your phone ding and you not look at it? Here's another one. When someone calls your name, you acknowledge that you hurt them, right? Either you look their way, you raise your hand, say, "What's up?" Think of the youngest child you know. Have they learned to reciprocate that call and answer properly? Or are they still learning that when someone calls their name, the proper way to reciprocate is to acknowledge that they heard it? One last example. When you hear a crash nearby, you look in the direction of the noise. What prompted you to change your focus? People respond to people. They're wired to respond. That's how God made us. The trick with reciprocation, the iron sharpening iron way that God designed it to be, is learning how to act or what to do in order to get the response you want. Time out for a second. Remember, the response I'm talking about, the response we want, is the one that makes you and the people involved more like Christ. It's the response that glorifies God. Because of sin, we can act and respond negatively. Sin makes it possible to create and get stuck in abusive cycles and generational bondages. A broken piece of iron can't sharpen a dull blade. Hurt people hurt people. So while reciprocation can be mastered and used for evil, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Test your motives and align yourself with God's will. That being said, this is every believer's goal when it comes to reciprocation. You having a Christ-like attitude in order to encourage a Christ-like response. This is what it means for iron to sharpen iron, for one person to sharpen another. So there's positive reciprocation and negative reciprocation, as it is with almost everything on this side of heaven. A family, a healthy family, they have a developing culture of positive reciprocation. This means that the reciprocation taking place either maintains healthy habits or improves the family's functioning. To some degree, each member responds to another in a way that reinforces wanted behavior, remember that's God-pleasing behavior, or builds self-confidence, character, and trust. Each member knows how to sharpen another so that the other thinks, speaks, and acts more like Jesus does. Here are some examples. A dad knows how to approach a daughter about staying out past curfew. A son-in-law knows how to respectfully disagree with his in-laws. A brother knows when a sibling needs a hug, and a grandmother knows when one of her grandkids needs extra attention. Positive reciprocation sees someone where they are and can identify what that person needs in order to take the next step forward. It simultaneously stands alongside a person and beckons them onward. When you reciprocate the way God intended you to, you reflect God's love and His discipline, His salvation and His sanctification. No one can reciprocate perfectly every time, and no family is perfect. But when done right, reciprocation can improve how a family communicates and works together to empower each individual to do the good works God created them to do. When a family does that, they glorify God, and reciprocation finds its rightful place in God's design. Let's make reciprocity personal. Ain't no lesson like a lesson learned, right? I've created a worksheet to help you process the reciprocity process. It breaks down the interpersonal exchange so that you can discern between your action, another's response, whether that was the response you were going for or not, and what might need to change if it wasn't. It'll also help you think through obstacles you might face and determine whether or not you're willing to pay that price. I'll do some examples with you so that you get a feel for how to use the worksheet. Then, if you're ready to make some waves, I want you to dive into the reciprocity worksheet this week with just one of your relationships. It'll be more manageable and doable that way. Trust me. To get started, let's just take a look at the elements on the worksheet. First is the person. Which relationship are you working on and with whom? Next, there's an area for you to write an action. It's entitled, When I Do This. Next box is an area that says he or she does this. So think about the person or the relationship you want to work on. Reflect on something that's happened recently, something you did, and then write down what that person did as a response to your action. Right underneath that, you'll see an area for you to write, this is what I wanted to happen, what I didn't want to happen, and I should keep doing that or I should try something different. Under that reflection item is a place for you to write something different you can try if there is an action you need to change. And right underneath that is the area for you to write obstacles you might face when you're trying something new. The worksheet thereafter just repeats itself a couple times so you can practice the reflection process when it comes to reciprocation. So let's dive in. I'll do some examples with you so you get a feel for how it goes. Got it? So for my first example, I'm going to use my husband. He is my person. And something we run into in the past is this. When I do this, when I clean his desk, he does this. He gets upset because he can't find what he's looking for. So let me think about that for a second. When I clean his desk, he gets upset because he can't find what he's looking for. Is this something I want to happen, or is this something I don't want to happen? Let's answer that first. This is not something I want to happen. I don't want him to get upset because he can't find what he's looking for. Because this is something I don't want to happen, that means I should try something different because I want his response to change, right? I don't want him to get upset. So then if this is what I don't want to happen, something different I can try is, well, very easily, quite the opposite, stop cleaning his desk. And if I stop cleaning his desk, this might be challenging because, in truth, I hate messes. Just visually seeing a mess stresses me out, right? But it could be worth it though, because I want him to know that I respect his space and his individuality, right? God didn't make us exactly the same, and he saw our differences as good. That's just the truth of it, no matter how I feel about messiness. At the end of the day, this low quality cleanliness quality isn't a deal breaker. It doesn't hurt anyone, nor does it go against our core beliefs, right? It's just a pet peeve for me. So it's not worth picking a fight over it. That's the logic as to why I'm going to pay this price of letting him have a messy room. So that wraps up our first example. Let's hop into a second example again, just so you guys can get a feel for how this plays out. So example 2. The person, or in this case, people I have in mind, are my kids. When I do this, when I feed them as soon as they get home from school, they do this. Honestly, they are just nicer to me and one another when I get them fed right away. Is this something I want to happen? Yes, I want them to be nice to me and I want them to be nice to one another, definitely. So should I keep doing what I'm doing, or should I change what I'm doing? I want to keep doing what I'm doing because I want this to keep happening. I want them to keep being nice to me and keep being nice to one another. Even if I keep doing this, something I'm already doing, this might be challenging because sometimes we just have errands to run right after school. We got places to go, things to do, and that means I have to pack food, or we need to grab a bite to eat. It's just ultimately another thing on my to-do list, right? And who likes another thing on their to-do list? And finally though, it could be worth it because doing anything with hangry kids is no fun. I think every single parent on the face of the planet can attest to that. I don't think there's anything that can justify bringing a hangry kid anywhere, at least not in my experience. So there you have it. Now that you've seen it done, it's your turn to reflect on reciprocity. Like I said before, start with just one person. Maybe you start with someone who's been giving you a hard time. Think about a recent experience that sticks out to you. What did they do? What happened right before they acted out? Once you identify those two things, fill in the top part of the worksheet and then work your way down. Take your time. This might not be something you finish in one setting. Spread it out over a few days, mull it over. The more you put into it, the better you'll understand the action-response relationship. If you have an epiphany at some point and you realize you misinterpreted something, by all means, go back and change it. Again, if you do that, you'll have a better understanding of the action-response relationship. Now, here's the important part. If you've been experiencing things you don't want to happen, If you're planning on trying something different, I've got to level with you and give you a heads up. I've been in those trenches, and it is no fun. It's no fun when you don't know which buttons to press or what's going to happen when you press each one of them. You will press the wrong button. You will. It's inevitable. Something or someone might explode when that happens. This is part of the learning process. And when it happens, because it will, I promise you that, when this happens, you might get shaken up. You will act, someone will respond, and then it'll be your turn to respond to their response. Do not respond with fear. God didn't give you a spirit of timidity. He didn't intend for you to cower or give up. Take time, make space for yourself, regroup, and then have at it again. Try something different. Try and try differently again and again until you get the response that glorifies God. One final caveat before I let you go tonight. Like I said earlier, reciprocation gives you power to change your relationships and situations. It can't, however, change every relationship or situation. That's the reality of sin. Hurt people hurt people. That cycle can't change unless the hurt person finds the healer. The Bible promises us that everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved, and those who don't aren't. If you're in a relationship with someone who's hurting you, reciprocation cannot save you, and it cannot save the relationship. Only Jesus saves. Reciprocation thereafter can restore and rebuild the relationship. If you or someone you know is in this situation, please reach out to someone you trust or to any of the LTC staff for support. You are not alone, and you don't have to go through this by yourself. Let's talk next steps. Once you have found what works for one person, once that relationship is gradually improving, glorifying God bit by bit, move on to the next person. As you regularly reflect on and work on reciprocity, you'll start to internalize the process. Heck, in a month or so, you might not even need the worksheet or a formal reflection process. You'll be able to do it on the go. Work at reciprocity the way God intended it, and it will become second nature to you. Not only that, but you will be better for it. I do believe that. God has given us the gift of relationship. We can know each other on an intimate level. More importantly, we can influence each other. And most importantly, that influence can make us more like Christ. Reciprocation is our God-given power to build one another up. People respond to people. So sharpen one another, like iron sharpens iron. Thank you for joining us tonight on our Wednesday night devotional. Have a wonderful night. God bless you all.